You've done something small 100 times. You're about to do it again. You open your banking app, glance at the balance, and feel that familiar, almost automatic reaction. A slight tightening in your chest. Not panic, not urgency. Just a quiet discomfort you can't quite justify. Nothing is wrong. Bills are paid. Income is coming in. There's no immediate threat. And still, your body reacts as if something is off. So you start doing what you always do. You scan transactions. You double-check numbers you already checked yesterday. You mentally replay recent purchases, that meal, that subscription, that thing you bought and didn't really need. And then the thought slips in, almost casually. I need to be more careful. It sounds reasonable, responsible, even. But here's the part most people never question. What if that voice isn't actually yours? There's a belief that sits quietly in a lot of people's minds. I'm just bad with money. It doesn't always come out loud. Sometimes it's softer. I'm not disciplined enough. I don't trust myself financially. I always mess this up somehow. And once that belief settles in, everything starts to orbit around it. Every mistake becomes proof. Every hesitation becomes confirmation. Every small win gets dismissed as luck. But that belief didn't appear out of nowhere. It was learned, repeated, reinforced, and most importantly, absorbed before you even had the chance to question it. Think back to the way money showed up around you growing up. Not the numbers, the energy, the tone of voice when bills were mentioned, the silence after certain purchases, the tension that filled the room when something unexpected happened. Maybe you remember someone saying, "We can't afford that," but it didn't sound like a simple statement. It sounded heavy, final. Maybe money conversations happened in whispers or arguments, or not at all. Maybe you learned that money was something you either had to fight for or be afraid of losing. And without realizing it, you started building your understanding of money on top of those moments. Not facts, feelings. There's a kid watching their parents stand in a grocery store, calculator in hand, quietly removing items from the cart. Not explaining, not complaining, just adjusting. The kid doesn't learn about budgeting. They learn about tension. They learn that money decisions come with pressure, that choosing one thing means losing another, that you have to be careful or something goes wrong. That lesson sticks long after the situation changes. Or maybe it was the opposite. Maybe money wasn't talked about at all. No visible stress, no clear system, just unpredictability. Things were fine until they weren't. And no one explained why. So you learned something else. That money is unstable, that you can't rely on it, that it can shift without warning. And if something can disappear suddenly, the safest thing to do is hold on tightly whenever you have it. Now fast forward. You're older. You earn your own money. On paper, things are different. But inside, the same patterns are running. Because your brain didn't just learn how money works, it learned how money feels. And feelings don't update just because your circumstances did. This is where the confusion starts. Because from the outside, your behavior can look inconsistent. You might be careful to the point of hesitation in some areas and impulsive in others. You might overthink small purchases, but avoid looking at bigger financial decisions altogether. You might save aggressively, but still feel like you're one mistake away from everything collapsing. It doesn't look logical, because it isn't. It's patterned. There's a woman who spends 20 minutes deciding whether to order food or cook at home. She calculates the cost difference, thinks about long-term habits, even checks her account. She decides to cook, feels responsible. Then later that week, she buys something online she didn't plan for. Not expensive, but unnecessary. And afterward, she feels guilty, not because of the amount, but because it reinforces the story. I don't have control, but she does have control. She just doesn't have clarity about what's driving her decisions. Here's the uncomfortable truth. A lot of what you call bad with money is actually your nervous system trying to protect you using outdated rules. Rules that made sense once. Rules that helped you adapt. Rules that kept you safe in an environment where money meant something very specific. But now, those same rules are creating friction because they weren't designed for your current reality. If you were taught that money disappears easily, you'll hold on to it tightly. If you were taught that money is scarce, you'll feel tension even when it's present. If you were taught that spending leads to regret, you'll hesitate, even when the decision is reasonable. If you were taught that you can't trust yourself, you'll second-guess everything. None of that is stupidity, it's conditioning. There's a moment that happens to people when they start to see this clearly. It's subtle, but it changes everything. They catch themselves in the act, standing there, over-analyzing something simple, and instead of immediately following the pattern, they pause and ask a different question. Where did I learn to feel this way? Not what's the smartest decision, not what's the most efficient choice, just where did this come from? And suddenly, the feeling isn't just about the present anymore. It connects back to a memory, a tone, a moment that shaped something. This doesn't magically fix your behavior, but it does something more important. It separates you from the pattern, because as long as you believe this is just who I am, you can't change it. But the moment you see this is something I learned, there's space, and in that space, there's choice. There's another layer people rarely talk about: shame. Not loud, obvious shame. Quiet shame. The kind that shows up after a purchase, or when you avoid checking your account, or when you compare yourself to someone who seems more put together financially. It's not just about money. It's about what money says about you, your discipline, your intelligence, your worth. And if you've been carrying the belief that you're bad with money, every financial decision becomes a test, and tests create pressure, and pressure distorts behavior. That's why sometimes the problem isn't the decision itself, it's the weight you attach to it. A small mistake feels like confirmation of a larger flaw. A neutral choice feels loaded, and instead of learning, adjusting, moving on, you spiral, internally, quietly. There's a man who avoids looking at his finances for weeks, not because he's reckless, but because every time he does, he feels a wave of judgment, not from anyone else, from himself. So he delays, which creates more anxiety, which reinforces the belief that he's not in control, which makes it even harder to look. A loop, not of ignorance, of avoidance rooted in shame. This is why traditional advice often doesn't land. Just budget. Just be disciplined. Just track your expenses. Those things are useful, but they assume the issue is lack of knowledge or effort. And for a lot of people, it's not. It's emotional residue. It's learned tension. It's identity. You don't fix that with a spreadsheet. You fix that by changing the relationship, slowly, quietly, in small moments. Like noticing when you're about to judge yourself for a decision and choosing not to. Like catching the urge to overanalyze something minor and allowing yourself to decide without perfect certainty. Like recognizing that the discomfort you feel after spending doesn't always mean you did something wrong. Sometimes it just means you stepped outside a familiar pattern. There's a different way to look at it. Instead of asking, am I good or bad with money? Ask, what patterns am I repeating, and do they still serve me? That question doesn't attack your identity. It examines your behavior, and behavior can change. Because here's the shift that matters. You're not starting from zero. You already have awareness. You already have experience. You already have the ability to reflect. The problem was never that you're incapable. It's that you've been operating on rules you didn't choose. And maybe the most important realization is this. You don't have to keep proving that you're responsible. You already adapted. You already learned. You already survived whatever taught you those patterns in the first place. You don't need to keep living like it's still happening. There's a quiet kind of freedom that starts to appear when this clicks. Not dramatic, not instant, but real. You make a decision and you don't immediately question it. You spend money, and the feeling afterward is neutral. Not euphoric, not guilty, just done. You look at your finances, and instead of tension, there's clarity. Not perfect comfort, but less noise. And over time, something shifts. You stop trying to be good with money. and start becoming someone who understands their patterns. Someone who can tell the difference between caution and fear, between discipline and restriction, between a real problem and an old story replaying itself. Because in the end, this was never about money. It was about what you were taught to believe money means. And once you see that clearly, you can start deciding for yourself what it actually means now. Not based on the past, not based on fear, but based on the life you're actually living and the one you're allowed to build from here.